We gather here not to learn how to change the outer world, but to discover why the outer world has never been the source of our good. All the struggle, all the reaching and grasping, all the trying to make life obey our will, these belong to the old state of consciousness, the one that believes that power exists somewhere outside of our own being. And so many of you have attempted, with great sincerity, to use the mind to attract health, to draw supply, to create harmony. You have visualized, affirmed, repeated formulas, and perhaps for a moment it appeared that results came, but then the results slipped away or required more effort, more tension, more mental strain. And eventually you found yourselves weary, wondering why a universe that promises abundance seems so difficult to coax into cooperation. I say to you, nothing is wrong with your desire for harmony, but the method by which you have attempted to attain it has been misplaced. The moment you try to make outer conditions conform to your will, whether through hard work or through mental manipulation, you are already living from the premise that good is out there, separate and apart from your own consciousness. And that is the only mistake you have ever made. For the Master revealed, and every mystic has testified, that the kingdom of God is within you, not beyond the horizon, not in the future, not in the world of conditions at all, within you. It is because we have not understood this that prayer becomes pleading and manifestation becomes struggle. And this, my friends, is why so many spiritual practices fail to bring lasting peace. They attempt to fix the outer while ignoring the source. They attempt to work on effects instead of causes. They attempt to attract to consciousness what consciousness itself is already full of. There is no use in trying to draw supply into the place from which supply issues forth. There is no use in trying to attract peace to the very awareness that is itself the substance of peace. And so, as we begin this hour together, let us make one quiet acknowledgement. All that we have ever sought is already present within the consciousness that is hearing these words. Before you attempt to change anything out there, before you rush again into the mind's frantic activity, pause, be still. Something in you knows that all good, all harmony, all fullness is already established, and it is only the habit of looking outward that has obscured the truth. We are not here to learn how to make life obey us. We are here to perceive that life is lived from within, and that the outer world is but the picture and form of the consciousness we bring to it. When this is understood, all struggle ends. Not because you finally learn the right technique, but because you discover the futility of technique itself when the truth of being is recognized. And so we begin. Now, let us look more deeply into what the world calls the law of attraction, not to oppose it, but to discern its limitation, for discernment is the beginning of spiritual vision. And I say this gently, the law of attraction, as commonly taught, is simply another form of seeking second. It begins with the belief that there is something outside your consciousness that you must draw toward yourself, be it wealth, companionship, safety, or healing. And the moment you accept that premise, you have placed the material world first and consciousness second. You have made the effect primary and the cause secondary. And this reversal is the entire difficulty. When you try to attract, you are secretly affirming lack. When you attempt to pull a good thing toward you, you are declaring that good is absent. Every time you visualize, hoping for a manifestation, you are testifying that you do not already dwell in the fullness of God's presence. And so the act itself, innocent as it seems, binds you to the very sense of separation you are seeking to escape. The human mind says, if I think hard enough, If I picture clearly enough, if I feel good enough, then good will come to me. But my friends, hear this well. The human mind cannot draw spiritual good. It cannot attract the gifts of God any more than a mirror can pull light into itself. The mirror reflects because it is placed before the light. The light is not the product of the mirror's effort. And in the same way, your consciousness must rest in God, not strive to pull God into manifestation. This is why I call it seeking second. You begin with a problem, an empty bank account, an ailing body, a lonely heart, and then you attempt to use mental force to correct the condition. But the problem was never the condition. The problem was the belief that the condition possesses power, substance, or reality in and of itself. You have given authority to the outer and then labored to change it through the inner. This is the inversion that keeps humanity in bondage. The Master spoke only of seeking first. He did not say to seek supply. He said to seek the kingdom. He did not say to seek healing. He said to rest in the Father's presence. And all these things, the things the world chases, are added unto you. Added not because you attracted them, but because divine order expresses itself naturally when consciousness is rightly oriented. Let us understand this clearly. To seek first is to begin with God. To seek second is to begin with the world. The law of attraction begins with the world. The infinite way begins with God. And so long as you look to the world, its forms, its conditions, its appearances, you will chase shadows and wonder why they slip through your fingers. But the moment you turn within, the moment you place consciousness above circumstance, a great shift occurs. You discover that you have been trying to attract to yourself what you already are. You discover that the fullness you sought in form was present in your own being all along. And when this is seen, seeking ceases. Recognition dawns, and life begins to unfold, not by force, but by grace. As we go further, let us turn our attention to the real source of this impulse to manifest, to attract, to draw outer conditions toward ourselves. We must look beneath the surface desire, beneath the personal wish, and find its root. And the root is always the same. The hypnosis of the five senses, the universal belief in a world that exists separate from the consciousness that beholds it. You see, from childhood we have been trained to trust appearances. If the bank account shows lack, we believe lack. If the body shows pain, we believe pain. If a relationship falters, we believe separation. We look at the forms, the conditions, the images projected before us, and we take them to be reality. This is the hypnosis. This is the spell under which the human race lives, that what the senses report is true, and because we believe the senses, we fear the absence of good. We worry about the future. We reach for techniques to correct conditions. We try to attract what appears to be missing. But understand this. The moment you attempt to manifest something, you have already accepted the testimony of the senses as authoritative. You have already agreed that the outer picture is real and therefore must be changed. And that agreement, that acceptance, is the very veil that hides the presence of God already functioning within you. Let us make this clear. There is no manifestation of spiritual good in matter. There is only the unfolding of what already exists in consciousness. When you try to attract, you are trying to change the picture without touching the light that projects it. You are attempting to rearrange shadows, but the picture on the screen has no power. The light behind the picture holds all power. The world you behold with the senses is not cause, it is effect, and the effect cannot change itself. Only the source can change the effect, and the source is always consciousness. This is why the desire to manifest arises. because we believe the picture instead of the light. We believe the appearance instead of the presence. We believe the outer instead of the inner. And so we seek outwardly, hoping for a correction, when the correction can only occur through a shift in awareness. The Master knew this when he said, "Judge not according to the appearance." He did not say to deny the appearance. He did not say to fight it. He said only, do not give it authority. Do not let it define your reality. For if you do, you will remain under the hypnosis of the senses, forever chasing conditions, forever trying to create better pictures on the screen of life. But the moment you realize that the senses cannot tell you the truth about God, the truth about supply, the truth about health, or the truth about harmony, something within you softens. The compulsion to manipulate the outer weakens. The desire to manifest fades, and in its place, a deeper hunger arises, not to attract, but to awaken, not to create, but to recognize. In that moment, you have broken the hypnosis. You have begun the great journey from sense to soul. And in that journey, you discover that everything you once tried to manifest was already present, awaiting your recognition. Now, as we move more deeply into this revelation, let us lay aside the entire premise of manifestation, for it has served its purpose. It has shown us the futility of trying to add to the fullness of God, and now we must turn to the principle that stands at the heart of the infinite way: recognition. Not effort, not will, not mental power, but quiet inward recognition of what already is. The whole of spiritual living rests on one cornerstone. God is the substance, the law, and the activity of your being, not in the future, not when you improve yourself, not after a long discipline of the mind now. This instant, before thought, before desire, before any attempt to manipulate life. And if this is true, and it is, then nothing can be added to your being, and nothing can be taken from it. Supply cannot be added, because supply is already the nature of your consciousness. Health cannot be added, because wholeness is the life of your being. Harmony cannot be added, because peace is the essence of your identity. And so the spiritual path cannot be the path of adding. It can only be the path of unveiling. This is why manifestation fails. It attempts to create what is already present. It attempts to attract what is already here. It treats the outer condition as substance and tries to rearrange it. But recognition does none of this. Recognition begins with God. And in beginning with God, it reveals that the forms of life are merely the shadows of realized consciousness. Think for a moment of the sun. The sun does not manifest light. The sun is light. It does not attract rays. It expresses its own nature effortlessly. And whether the clouds appear or disappear has no effect whatsoever on the presence of the light. The clouds conceal nothing. They only obscure your perception. So it is with you. You do not manifest good. You do not attract supply. You do not create harmony. You recognize that all these qualities are already present in the infinite nature of God, and because I and the Father are one, they are also present in the infinite nature of your being. When recognition dawns, the outer world reorganizes, not because you forced it to, but because consciousness must express its own nature. When you recognize abundance within, the forms of abundance appear without. When you recognize peace within, the outer world becomes orderly. When you recognize wholeness, the body responds not because you treated it, but because you ceased believing the appearance. Recognition is the sacred pause in which you acknowledge nothing needs to be changed. Everything needs to be seen. And in that seeing, the truth becomes the law of your experience, not through effort, not through concentration, but through the simple act of resting in what is eternally true. You see now why the infinite way is not a method of manifestation, but a path of realization. It does not deal with effects. It deals only with the source. It does not teach you how to get things. It teaches you how to know God. And knowing God, you find that nothing has ever been missing. To recognize is to awaken. To awaken is to live. And to live in this awareness is to watch life unfold with a grace the personal mind could never manufacture. Let us now look gently, but honestly, at why the law of attraction fails to bring lasting fulfillment. Its failure is not in its intention, for the intention to experience harmony is good. Its failure is not in the human being attempting it, for the human being is earnest and sincere. Its failure lies only in the belief that the personal mind possesses spiritual power, and this belief must be exposed, not condemned, so that it can fall away naturally. The moment you attempt to visualize your good, you are depending upon the personal mind. The moment you repeat affirmations to compel the universe to respond, you are depending upon the personal mind. The moment you attempt to raise your vibration in order to attract a condition, you are depending upon the personal mind. And the personal mind has no spiritual capacity, no creative authority, no divine substance. It is simply the instrument through which you interpret the world of appearances. Nothing more. This is why every method that relies on personal effort collapses. Even if it brings temporary results, those results are unstable because their source is unstable. The personal mind is forever moving between fear and hope, between doubt and desire, between confidence and insecurity, and whatever rises from such a foundation will fall when the next wave of fear appears. When you find yourself straining to think the right thoughts, straining to hold the right feeling, straining to maintain a vibration, you are witnessing the personal mind trying to impersonate God. And it cannot do so. The personal mind can recite truth, but it cannot realize truth. It can imagine good, but it cannot bring forth good. It can desire peace, but it cannot establish peace. All spiritual power belongs to the presence within, not to the human mind. And here is the tragedy. The more you rely on mental force, the more you reinforce the very fear you are trying to escape. For every effort to manifest something carries within it the quiet confession, I do not have it. Every attempt to attract good carries the hidden message, I am separate from my good. And this sense of separation is the root of all fear. Fear is not dissolved by attracting better conditions. Fear is dissolved by realizing that there is no condition outside of the one presence, and that this presence is the substance of your being. When this realization dawns, fear falls away like a shadow in the light, and with it the entire compulsion to manipulate life. You see now that the failure of the law of attraction is not a failure of principle, it is a failure of perspective. It begins from the premise that you lack something. The infinite way begins from the premise that you lack nothing. One begins with need. The other begins with completeness. One begins with outer desire. The other begins with inner recognition. One begins with the personal mind. The other begins with the presence. And so, the moment you turn from effort to recognition, you have stepped out of the realm of fear. You are no longer at the mercy of moods, vibrations, or circumstances. You have remembered the truth that the human mind cannot achieve, but the spirit within you has always known. All power is in God, and God is the life of your consciousness. From this point on, manifestation becomes unnecessary, and grace becomes inevitable. And now, let us come to the heart of this way of life. the very center from which all spiritual demonstration flows, the practice of the presence. This is not a method in the sense that the world uses the word. It is not a technique to gain something. It is not a ritual, nor is it a discipline imposed upon the mind. It is simply the gentle turning of awareness inward until the presence, which has never been absent, becomes consciously realized. In this practice, we do not seek anything. We do not ask for health or supply or guidance. We do not attempt to change a condition or improve a circumstance. We merely rest in the quiet acknowledgement that God is here. And not here as an idea, nor as a belief, nor as a hope, but as the living substance, the living law, the living activity of our being. When you sit in this stillness, you are not speaking to God. You are not attempting to reach God. You are not calling God from afar. You are simply recognizing that the life which animates your very breath is the life of God, that the awareness with which you hear these words is the presence of God, that the intelligence that knows how to be still is the intelligence of God. And when this recognition is allowed, not forced, not manufactured, but allowed, something within you shifts. You feel a release, a softening, a quiet knowing that no outward effort can produce. In this stillness, there is no asking. There is only recognizing. I and the Father are one, not two seeking connection, not a separated self attempting to attract divine gifts. One, already one, eternally one. When this becomes even slightly realized, the need for manifestation dissolves. You find that the desire to attract anything fades because you sense, even faintly, that nothing is missing within the presence that fills you. And this is the secret. When nothing is missing inwardly, everything aligns outwardly. Not because you have compelled the universe to obey you, but because consciousness naturally reveals its own harmonies when it is uncluttered by fear and striving. The practice of the presence is simply this: a moment of turning away from the world of appearances, a moment of releasing the personal mind's desire to control, a moment of remembering that the source is within, a moment of resting in the awareness that God is the only power, the only life, the only reality. You need not hold the mind still. You need not silence thought. You need not achieve a particular feeling. You need only acknowledge, quietly and sincerely, that the kingdom is within you now. And if thoughts arise, let them arise. If feelings come, let them come. The presence is not disturbed by thought or feeling. It is not enhanced by silence, nor diminished by noise. The presence simply is. And as you rest in that isness, you begin to sense that life is happening through you, not by you. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, you begin to understand why manifestation is unnecessary. What you attempted to attract is already present in the infinite nature of your being. What you attempted to create is already finished in God. What you attempted to fix is already whole in spirit. This is the hidden method, not a method of power, but a recognition of power. Not a method of attraction, but a recognition of fullness. Not a method of creating, but a recognition of being. When this becomes the foundation of your life, outer good flows as naturally as breath, not as reward, not as result, but as expression. And expression is effortless when the source is realized. Let us now illustrate this principle in the only way that truly matters, through lived experience. For spiritual truth is not something we hold in theory. It must become the law of our being. And once we cease trying to manifest, to manipulate, to attract, we begin to witness something remarkable. Problems dissolve without personal effort. because they dissolve at their root in consciousness. Consider, for example, the one who has struggled financially. They have affirmed abundance, visualized prosperity, practiced gratitude with great sincerity. Yet the struggle continued. Why? Because each effort was born out of fear. Each affirmation carried within it the hidden belief that supply was outside, that the universe needed to respond, that something had to change out there. But the moment this individual turned away from attracting and began quietly resting in the presence, perhaps only minutes a day, something began to shift. Not the bank account first, but the sense of lack. A peace arose where fear had been. A confidence emerged, not in worldly security, but in the integrity of the presence within. And as that inner assurance deepened, outer forms rearranged themselves, new opportunities appeared, unexpected channels opened, financial conditions softened. Not because the person created new supply, but because they stopped believing in lack. Or think of one facing illness. They may have spent years affirming health, repeating truths, visualizing healing. Yet the more they tried to manifest wholeness, the more conscious they became of the body, and the body's testimony is always limited. But when they ceased treating the body and instead practiced the recognition of the presence, just resting, without asking, without seeking, they discovered something profound: peace. Not bodily comfort at first, but peace. And that peace is the first evidence of the Christ realized in consciousness. As that peace remains, the fear surrounding the condition melts away, and the body, no longer held under the hypnotic power of fear, begins to respond. Changes appear gently, gradually, naturally, because harmony is the nature of the presence, and the body reflects consciousness. And consider the relationships of life. Many attempt to manifest love, attract soulmates, or fix discord through effort. But the moment you cease trying to change another person and instead recognize the Christ within them, something shifts. You stop relating to their personality. You stop reacting to their behavior. You behold, quietly and inwardly, their true identity. And that recognition, never spoken, never imposed, begins to soften the atmosphere of the relationship. Resentments fade, tensions loosen. Loving interaction comes not through effort, but through the silent activity of realized consciousness. This is the great secret. The outer world changes when you stop trying to change it. The outer reflects the inner, and the inner is transformed through recognition, not through force. You see, we do not solve financial problems. We do not solve health problems. We do not solve relationship problems. We do not solve any problem. We awaken to the presence in which no problem exists. And as we awaken, the pictures of the outer world shift of themselves because they have no life of their own. They are but the shadows cast by consciousness. Once you realize this, you stop fighting shadows. You stop rearranging effects. You stop manipulating form. You rest in God. And God, being the only power, expresses itself through your experience as harmony, abundance, wholeness, companionship, guidance, whatever is needed at the moment. Not because you ask, but because it is the nature of God to express. This is why every true demonstration in the infinite way begins within and remains within long before it appears without. And when the outer finally changes, it feels effortless, not because you avoided action, but because your action flowed from a consciousness already at peace, already supplied, already whole. What the world calls miracles are simply the natural consequences of realized presence. When you stop trying to manifest, you make room for grace. Let us now turn to one of the deepest truths ever revealed, a truth so simple that the human mind overlooks it. and so profound that it ends forever, the desire to attract, to manifest, or to manipulate life. It is this. Your true identity is I am, not the personal I that hopes and fears and strives, but the divine I that existed before thought, before desire, before the world was formed, the I that is the presence of God individualized as your being. When the Master said, I am, he was not speaking as a person, he was speaking out of the realization of his oneness with the Source. And when he said, I and the Father are one, he did not claim equality with God as a separate self. He acknowledged that the life he lived was God expressing itself, God being God, through the form called Jesus. This same truth applies to you. The personal mind is not the source of your being. It is not the source of your good, your supply, your health, or your peace. All that you are in truth flows from the infinite I that lives as the center of your consciousness. And until you recognize this, you will continue trying to attract what you already are and to manifest what is already fulfilled in God. The law of attraction begins with the belief, I want. The infinite way begins with the knowing. I am. I want testifies to absence. I am testifies to presence. I want is the cry of the personal mind. I am is the voice of the Christ within. This is why all attraction-based methods eventually collapse. They are rooted in the sense of a separate self, attempting to acquire what it believes is lacking. But spiritual realization begins the moment you discover that the self which seeks has no real existence. The only self that is the I that is God expressing as you. When you rest in the I am, something extraordinary happens. You stop attempting to use God. You stop asking God to do things for you. You stop trying to make life conform to your wishes. Instead, you become an instrument through which God reveals its own nature. Do you see the shift? You stop directing God. You begin witnessing God. You stop trying to attract conditions. You begin allowing consciousness to express. You stop thinking of life as something outside yourself. You begin to recognize that all life is flowing from within yourself. In this awareness, problems lose their urgency because you sense that no problem can alter the nature of the I that you are. Circumstances lose their power because you no longer believe that conditions can either give or withhold your good. Even desire itself becomes purified, for you no longer desire from lack, but from fullness. What you call desire becomes simply the movement of the divine within you, drawing you into greater unfoldment. And as you live from the I am, outer harmony appears naturally, not as a reward, not as a result, but as the natural expression of realized being. Just as the sun does not strive to shine, and the rose does not try to bloom, so the individual who abides in the I am does not attempt to manifest good. The good simply reveals itself. This is the end of attraction. This is the beginning of realization. And realization is nothing more and nothing less than the recognition that who you are in essence is the very presence and activity of God. In that realization, life unfolds without resistance, without fear, without effort. To live from the I am is to live from truth. To live from truth is to live in freedom. And to live in freedom is to discover that all the good you ever sought has been within you, awaiting only your recognition. And now, as we bring this hour of contemplation to its close, let us rest for a moment in the fragrance of what has been revealed. For the purpose of this teaching is not to add more knowledge to the mind, but to awaken something deep within the soul, something ancient, something eternal, something that has always been present but seldom recognized. You have seen that the entire struggle of human existence arises from one simple misunderstanding: the belief that good must be gotten, attained, achieved, or attracted. And from this belief flows all fear, all striving, all sense of insecurity. The world says get, Spirit says be. The world says acquire, Spirit says recognize. The world says try, Spirit says rest. The great shift of the spiritual life is the shift from getting to being, from seeking to knowing, from desire to realization. And this shift is not accomplished through effort, nor through discipline of the mind, nor through willpower. It happens in the quiet moment when you cease trying to make life yield its treasures and discover that the treasure is already within you. The kingdom of God is not something you must attract. It is something you must acknowledge. The presence of God is not something you must invoke. It is something you must recognize. The grace of God is not something you must deserve. It is something that has always been functioning, even when you were unaware of it. As you go from here, do not ask how to hold on to this awareness. Do not strive to remember these truths. Simply pause many times each day, even if only for a breath, and silently acknowledge the presence within. That is all. That is enough. In that moment of recognition, the personal self loosens its grip and the divine shines through. In that moment, the pressure to attract disappears because you sense that you are already living in the fullness of God. In that moment, the world loses its power to frighten you because you see that the world is only a picture and the light behind the picture is infinite. Let the world do what the world does. Let appearances rise and fall. Let conditions change as they will. Your work is not to control them. Your work is not to arrange them. Your work is not to force the universe to comply with your wishes. Your only work is to rest in the truth that God is the life of your being, the law of your being, and the source of your being. And when you rest there, the outer unfolds in its own divine order. This is the way of the infinite. This is the life lived in presence. This is the freedom that comes when the desire to attract is surrendered to the joy of realization. Go now not as a seeker, but as one who has found. Go not as a manifester, but as a beholder. Go not as a separate mind trying to reach God, but as the consciousness through which God reveals its own perfection. And let this truth abide in you. All that you have ever sought is already present within the I am that you are. And in that recognition, all things are added by grace, not by effort. Peace be unto you.